It was supposed to be just another high-profile morning segment on Good Morning America, a sit-down interview to promote Meghan Markle's latest humanitarian initiative. The Duchess of Sussex had been making rounds in the media for her newly launched Women's Empowerment Foundation and, according to insiders, had insisted on a live broadcast to cut through the media distortion. GMA agreed. What no one expected was a confrontation so sharp and unfiltered, it would set the internet ablaze within hours. The studio was unusually tense that morning. Producers whispered frantically behind the cameras, eyes glued to the teleprompter and countdown monitor. George Stephanopoulos, a veteran journalist with decades of political and media experience, adjusted his mic and straightened his posture as Meghan walked into the studio. She looked poised, styled in a crisp cream blazer and silk blouse, her expression calm but cool. She took her seat across from George, offering a quick smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Good morning," she said smoothly. "Good morning, Meghan," George replied, not returning the smile. "Let's jump right into it." The first few minutes were typical. Meghan spoke passionately about her new initiative, citing statistics on gender inequality and sharing personal anecdotes. But George, known for his incisive questions, wasn't content with surface-level fluff. "So you speak about empowering women's voices," he said, fingers laced before him, "but some critics argue that your own public narrative has often centered on victimhood, especially when it involves the royal family. Do you think that's compatible with empowerment?" There was a subtle shift in the room. Meghan blinked, caught slightly off guard. "I think we need to distinguish between being honest about trauma and being labeled a victim," she said calmly. "Sharing my truth doesn't silence others, it amplifies the need for change." George tilted his head, his tone growing firmer. "But many people, including members of the British public, felt you were weaponizing that truth to damage an institution without accountability. When Oprah asked if the royal family was racist, you let that implication hang in the air without clarification. Doesn't responsibility come with influence?" Meghan stiffened. She glanced off camera, perhaps to a PR aide, but quickly composed herself. "I was sharing personal experiences," she said, her voice cooler now. "It's not my job to protect an institution that never protected me." That was when George leaned forward, his voice cutting sharper than before. "But your experiences weren't entirely private, were they? You've done Netflix specials, podcasts, magazine covers, and books, all designed to curate a global image. At what point does authenticity end and branding begin?" There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence that seemed to freeze the air. Meghan's jaw clenched. "Excuse me, you've spoken against media intrusion," George continued, "and yet, every step you've taken since stepping back from royal duties has been increasingly public, profitable, and, frankly, performative. Isn't that a contradiction?" The studio crew stood still. Even Robin Roberts, watching from the sidelines, raised an eyebrow. Meghan leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "I find that line of questioning unfair and..." George interrupted, firmly but professionally. "Unfair? You've been given one of the largest global platforms of any private citizen alive today. Surely scrutiny is part of that privilege." Meghan inhaled sharply, clearly biting back something. "Perhaps you should be asking why certain voices, mine included, are so easily criticized for doing what others in the same position have done for years without question." George didn't flinch. Perhaps because others didn't preach privacy while signing multi-million-dollar deals with Spotify, Netflix, and publishing houses. Perhaps because when other royals spoke, it wasn't always followed by a trademark. That landed hard. For the first time, Meghan's carefully maintained composure faltered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, a flicker of frustration in her eyes. The cameras caught every second. "Well," she said slowly, visibly restraining her tone, "if having a voice is seen as threatening, maybe it's the silence that needs re-examining." George looked directly into the camera, then back at her. Or maybe the audience just wants consistency. It was the kind of moment you could feel echoing beyond the studio walls, one of those rare, unscripted collisions where media training and messaging crumble under the weight of real-time accountability. The segment ended abruptly. The control room quickly cut to commercial, and Meghan stood up before the credits even began rolling. She didn't shake George's hand. Instead, she turned to her publicist, whispering something with a tight expression. Later that day, social media erupted. Clips of the confrontation were posted and reposted, dissected from every angle. #GMA and #George vs Meghan both trended globally within hours. Supporters of Meghan called the interview an ambush. Others praised George for finally challenging what they saw as a carefully curated PR machine. ABC declined to comment. As for George Stephanopoulos, he walked off the set that morning with the same quiet professionalism he's always been known for, neither gloating nor apologizing. When asked later by a colleague if he regretted how intense it got, he reportedly shrugged and said, "She came here to speak her truth. I let her. I just asked a few questions. And sometimes, that's all it takes to pull back the curtain."